Imagine being locked away for a crime you didn't commit. Your life just stolen. It's an absolute nightmare scenario, right? But for hundreds of people, it's been a terrifying reality. So today, we're going to dive into the hidden psychology that can turn an innocent person into a convicted criminal and figure out what these devastating mistakes really mean for all of us. All right, let's get right into it. We're starting with a really tough but crucial fact. The very system that's designed to protect us can sometimes get things profoundly, devastatingly wrong. You probably remember the case of Amanda Knox. She was a young American student in Italy, and her life was just completely turned upside down. She got accused, torn apart by the media, and then convicted of murdering her roommate. She ended up spending 4 years, 4 agonizing years, in an Italian prison before the system finally caught up, admitted its mistake, and set her free. But where did it all start? I mean, what was the first piece of evidence? Well, it wasn't a smoking gun. It was this observation from the homicide chief. Knox seemed cool and calm when everyone, especially the police, expected her to be hysterical. Her reaction just didn't fit the script of a grieving friend. And that one single, subjective judgment planted a seed of doubt that would eventually grow into a full-blown wrongful conviction. And that right there brings us to the absolute core question of this whole explainer. How is it possible that something as personal and subjective as an inappropriate emotion can actually help someone to prison for murder? Well, to find the answer, we've got to look at where two worlds collide, the science of human behavior and the letter of the law. And that is the world of forensic psychology. Really, all it is the field that applies what we know about the human mind, about memory, bias, decision-making, directly to the legal system. The whole point is to understand and hopefully improve how justice is actually carried out. And this isn't some newfangled idea. Psychologists have been waving red flags about this for over a century. Way back in the 1890s, guys like James Cattell were proving that just because you're confident about what you saw doesn't mean you're right. Then others came along and showed how easily kids can be led by suggestive questions and how intense emotion can literally warp your memory. I mean, think about it. By 1908, Hugo Munsterberg was already publishing books warning the world about the very real danger of false confessions. So Munsterberg saw this coming over 100 years ago. Let's really get into why an innocent person is often the most susceptible to the psychological traps that lead to these false confessions. See, this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's usually a 3-step psychological breakdown. It starts with something called naive trust. Innocent people, more than anyone, believe the truth will set them free, so they waive their rights. I've got nothing to hide, right? But here's where it backfires. Their strong, honest denials can be seen as defiance, which just makes the interrogation more intense. And that leads to step 3, overwhelming psychological pressure. After hours and hours of exhaustion and stress, a person's will can just break. They might confess just to make the nightmare stop. And a false confession, well, it's like the first domino in a long, dangerous line. It contaminates the whole investigation. Police get tunnel vision and they stop looking at other leads. They fall into confirmation bias, where every new piece of evidence is twisted to fit the story of guilt. It can even lead to something called noble cause corruption. That's when officials bend the rules because they're just so sure they have the right person. All of a sudden, every other kind of error becomes way more likely and a whole lot harder to spot. Okay, so what happens when the system finally does correct itself? You'd think being proven innocent means it's all over, but for so many exonerees, a whole new kind of struggle is just getting started. Which leads us to a really powerful question. Does that label of criminal ever really wash off, even after your name is officially cleared? Well, some researchers set up a pretty brilliant experiment to find out. So what they did was send out emails to landlords asking about rental apartments. The emails were all basically the same, except for one huge detail. The control email was simple. Is the place available? The releasee email admitted to having a criminal record and serving time. And then there was the exoneree email. It also mentioned a record, but was very clear. I didn't do it, I was wrongfully convicted, and I was proven innocent by DNA. So who do you think got the most replies from landlords? The answer is, it's genuinely shocking. The exoneree, the person who was literally proven innocent by DNA, got the fewest replies. Let that sink in. Landlords were more likely to rent to someone who admitted they were guilty than to someone who insisted they were innocent and had the proof to back it up. What this tells us is just staggering, that stigma sticks. But why? Psychologists think it might be something called cognitive dissonance. A simple story, bad guy did his time, is just easier for our brains to swallow than a complicated one about police mistakes and DNA evidence. The more complex story, it just sounds suspicious to people. And the tragic irony here is that unlike people who are released from prison, exonerees often walk out with absolutely no support system, and often not a dime in compensation for the years that were stolen from them. But the damage doesn't stop with the innocent person. There is one last chilling cost to every single one of these wrongful convictions. Remember this number, 76.
And this one, 33.
And finally, 30. So what are those numbers? They are the price we all pay when the real culprit is left on the streets. The Innocence Project looked at just 130 cases of wrongful conviction, and while an innocent person was locked in a cell, the real perpetrators went on to commit at least 76 more sexual assaults, 33 more murders, and 30 other violent crimes. And that is the devastating final truth. A wrongful conviction doesn't just imprison an innocent person, it leaves a guilty one free to create new victims. And that brings us all the way back to psychology, to the biases and the flaws in our own thinking. And it leaves us with a really difficult but really important question we all have to think about. If our own minds can be so easily tricked by emotions and bias, how on earth do we build a justice system that is better and fairer than we are?